Hello, I'm Aaron Marcus, founder and CEO of Conquer Your Business, and I want to welcome you to Ready Yet? If all you needed was a step-by-step plan of what to do, you could buy a book on how to succeed and you would be all set. But here's the rub. You'll never do what it takes until you become the person it takes to do it. The Ready Yet podcast is dedicated to those who are ready to become the person who succeeds, ready to become the person who steps into more, and ready to become the best version of themselves. In the I'm Ready interview series, join me for inspiring conversations with people who figured out who they needed to be in order to achieve their dreams, and were brave enough to be that person. Awesome. Welcome to this episode of the Ready Yet podcast, where I am talking to people who stepped into greatness because they were ready to make things happen. And I am so excited. Longtime friend joining me today. We've grown so much at the same time. It's really exciting. Aaron Masliansky, Aaron and Aaron, we used to work together all the time, and believe me, that never screwed anybody up, right? So I met Aaron, it's gotta be 7-8 years ago, at a Women's Council of Realtors meeting, back when I had my last business working with families with aging parents, and he was representing his brother's moving company. We ended up doing a ton of work together. They were my go-to moving company, and referred him real estate deals because he was also starting his real estate business at the time. He referred me tons of business. It was awesome. I mean, it was such a great relationship. And when I left that business, kind of at the same time, he was really stepping into amazing new things. So we've always stayed in contact, and it's just remarkable to me if we would have talked 6-7 years ago about where we saw ourselves, I don't think either of us would have come up with what we're doing now. So with that, why don't you give a more formal introduction and let people know what you're really up to?
Well, thank you for having me on, Aaron. And it's awesome to be another Aaron on this show. I know you've had another Aaron too. Yes. So all us Aarons need to stick together, and thank you, Key and Peele. For the AA Ron skit. But no, this is so cool to be on here. To give people a little bit more of a background on me, I'm a real estate agent. I have a great family. I live in the Skev, which is Skokie, but an Evanston mailing address, which is in the Chicagoland area. I host a radio show now, a podcast. I'm involved in a lot of different organizations that have a global reach. But what Aaron said is true. When we met, I was working for my brother's moving company. I helped him grow his business. Before that, I worked for a real estate developer, and that ended around 2009. So my brother was gracious to give me a job. He needed somebody as well, and helped grow that together. And it was a great experience, a lot of fun, met some great people there. But I always had a passion still for real estate. So I got my real estate license in 2011, and I grew that business. And what I really loved about real estate is, first of all, I know the business pretty well. I can help a lot of people. And I like the independence of it. So I was able to launch that into a whole nother career. And that gave me more opportunities to explore because of the somewhat freedoms that it provides.
Sure.
So,
in the scheduling.
And, one thing I was thinking about before today about our conversation and how I got to where I'm going, and I'm sure we'll talk about a lot of the different things that I have going on, is I like being responsible for myself. It's my own personal responsibility. It's not for everybody, but for me, I kind of thrive on it. Yeah. I'm thinking back to how I grew up, and even when I was a kid or a teenager and I wanted to do something, I would be the one to research it. My parents wouldn't be the one to set it up. I wanted to go to space camp. I was 17 years old. I figured out, okay, how do I sign up? And I went with a couple friends, and we took a Greyhound bus down to Huntsville, Alabama. Awesome. Or if I wanted to, do something, I got a job. I first started working when I was 12 years old, packing boxes for this man. His name was Bill Cook, and he would send out a box of cookies and a thank you letter from a couple different car dealerships. Now, I won't say I didn't have help. There were times that my family helped me because I would pack the boxes at home. but it was taking that initiative. And I think that that is something that's been key throughout my life.
Well, and that it's such a really big teaching point. It is the same for me, not nearly with the space camp. And I will be the first one to tell you, this came to me later in life. I was busy being more of a juvenile delinquent at 17, as opposed to figuring out how to do some good in the world. But especially as an adult, the idea that if you want something to happen, you have to make it happen, and not wait for other people to solve the problem. You have to be the one to do it.
You do. You have to have the vision of where you want to be, and that helps define the steps and actions that you take as you try to get there. But for me, when I was going into college, I thought I'd be a pilot.
Oh, nice.
And I needed to also have a major, because University of Illinois didn't have a bachelor's degree in aviation at that time. So you had to pick a major at the same time. And I really liked the game SimCity. So I figured out that urban planning is the match for that. So I got my degrees in that. And then during that time, it was 2003. It was the run up to the second Gulf War. And I took a class in energy and security in the ACDIS department, which is arms control, domestic and international security.
Oh my gosh.
So that kind of opened up my perspective on things. And I got a master's in urban planning too. And my focus was on international development. And at the same time, I was taking classes in, different security issues. So I always thought either I'm going to go into real estate or I'm going to get into some kind of global affairs work.
And now I both.
Now I can do both. And what I did was I went and dropped off resumes after I graduated in 2004. I dressed up in a suit, walked out to real estate developers' offices and handed off my resume, and I got a job with somebody. So I went that route, but I always still had that passion. So I was trying to figure out, how do I get back to that?
Well, and so one of the big things I tell people, because I've conversations all the time with people who have lost touch with what they want. And one of the things you did, and it's, if you know where you're going, great. But even if you're not sure where you want to land, take the next step, take the action. If you keep taking the actions, the opportunities reveal themselves.
Absolutely. And if you take the steps where you start to meet people in the places that have similar interest, that opens up more doors. You get to meet more people. It's networking. The opportunities are endless as long as you step into it. So I'll tell you a story. I was working for my brother, and then I went and was full-time in real estate. And I had that time and availability, and I always had this passion for global affairs. And I knew about this organization called the Chicago Council on Global Affairs. I just never did anything with them. Honestly, I didn't have time to go to their events with little kids and, two full-time jobs and everything else.
Yes.
So it was a little hard. And I looked on their website and I saw that they were having Gary Kasparov come to speak. And Gary Kasparov is an amazing chess master, but he is also the, a spokesperson for freedom and democracy. He's not well liked in Russia. So I went to hear him speak. It was incredible. I bought his book. He signed my book. I got a picture. It was so cool. And I went with my friend Mark to this. And I said to him afterwards, I said, look, I don't know anybody in this organization, but my God, I love it. And I am going to continue to come back and I'm going to get involved. I'm like, I don't know how, but I will.
Yep.
So I kept going to events. It's damn awkward being there in the room where you know nobody, but I started to talk to people and, just, you gotta.
That's how I met you. I walked into that. You're like one of the first people. I didn't know anyone in that room, but you had my same name. And I said, I'll go talk to this person. I seriously.
Find the commonality, right?
Exactly. Find something to talk about.
And it was great for us to meet. But for this organization, I started getting involved. I applied for this Young Professional Ambassador program, and then I get to meet everybody. I've had lunch with the head of the organization, Ivo Dalder, who is the former U.S. ambassador to NATO. I mean, wow. I've sat across the table from different people who are, ambassadors for different nations to the United States, the ambassador from Afghanistan to the United States. I've taken pictures with the ambassador from Australia to the United States. I heard Joe Biden speak in person. I mean, John Kerry, all these different people. I'm like, what am I doing here? And it's almost like, people talk about the imposter syndrome.
Right.
And you start to think that, but then everybody's got that. So that was kind of really a breakthrough for me. And it's led to many more opportunities throughout.
So I want to share something because I think you're going to have some insight for people, because there's something I know about you, because we hung out, we were on work groups together, we worked out a lot.
A lot of blood, sweat, and tears with our clients.
Oh boy. But here's the thing, because sometimes it's easy for a listener, audience member, my clients to say, well, sure, you can do that because you're not scared, or you can do that because you're XYZ. And one of the things I know about you is you're very particular. You're very particular. You're not a big risk taker in general.
Right.
I mean, you're just not. However, look at what you've done. So for the people who are, because, my people know that I'm a bit crazy. They know I'm a bit adrenaline junkie. They know I've jumped out of airplanes, swam with sharks. I thrive on that. But for all the people who are more calculated, who are more thinkers and not crazy risk takers, and yet here you are. So what did you have to do, have to think about, have to overcome to step into being the only person, not just the only person in a room, because we're not talking about a little local networking group here, but the only person in a really freaking impressive room? You know what I mean? It's like next level room. So what have you told yourself or done that would help somebody who's not a natural step into all those things?
Well, my experiences, even if small, have helped me. When I was working for the moving company, I did many presentations at different real estate offices before a lot of people to talk about moving and storage. And that kind of broke down fears of speaking before a lot of different people, building those relationships for a subject that, I care about. Obviously, I cared about my brother's company and my job, but it's not something that I always dreamed of doing. But you learn how to speak it, and you learn all the information on it, and you get comfortable with it. Mm-hmm. So speaking to a lot of people and meeting people started to become more natural to me. Another thing is, when I was back in college, I did have this vision of maybe going to Washington, D.C. and being involved in these different things. And I saw that for myself. And when I didn't end up doing it, I almost kind of beat myself up a little bit about it. But when I started to see that opportunity is there, I realized that passion didn't go away, and I can be in this room with people. And just in terms of taking risk, going and doing the full-time job, it was a calculated risk, because I was lucky enough to still have another job in case I wasn't getting,
right.
Income from real estate. And I was it pushed me really, really hard to make sure that I had enough momentum, but it was more of a calculated risk in that way. Starting a podcast and then now a radio show was just trying it out. Like, what's the worst that happens? Like, I didn't have that fear. I don't know. I didn't feel like that was a risk to me in a way.
Well, because for that one, it was like, kind of like with me, let's just see what happens. What's the worst thing that could happen? I've wasted some hours talking to people I enjoy talking to. That's not a big risk.
No, that's not. But I tell you, there was a point where, so the podcast helped people think of me in a different light, because Absolutely. They see me as this interviewer or some kind of journalist or whatnot. And now it's like I'm stepping into that role in many more ways, but people started to view me differently. So the Chicago Council asked me to interview one of their senior fellows at the beginning of 2019 at one of their events. And for like 20 minutes, there's a couple hundred people in the room. And I asked him we talked about the history of the Chicago Council. Very cool. And it kind of put the spotlight on me at that event. So I met somebody who was telling me about global real estate and I should get involved in that. And I didn't even know what that meant. So basically what it is there's a whole part of the real estate industry, which is to promote American real estate, or in this case, Chicago real estate, to the rest of the world, and then vice versa, to help with inbound, outbound referrals, investors, whatnot. So I started to get involved and ask about it. Like, why not? Like, if that's an opportunity that kind of marries the things that I do, fantastic. And that led to me going to some of the events that the Chicago Association of Realtors had. Mm-hmm. I met Mabel Guzman there, and she's now big at the National Association of Realtors. And she was promoting this global trade mission to Thailand. And she's like, "Oh, you should come. Like, if you're interested in global, this is for you." So I took the flyer and I was joking around with my friends. I'm like, "This is crazy. Like, I'm not going to go to Thailand."
Talk about wait a minute.
Right. And then I talked to my wife about it. She's like, "No, you should go." I'm like, "Really?" So I ended up getting the gumption to go. And while I was on the plane going there, I posted in one of your Facebook groups about how this is like, I posted this picture because a couple of years before I sat at the Chicago Botanic Garden. Just, I like to do meditation and just kind of clear my mind and see what my vision is. And I'm sitting there at the top of this hill or whatever there.
By the waterfall, right?
But yeah, by the waterfall.
That's where we all sit. That's where we all sit to think.
Yes, it's beautiful.
Amazing.
So I'm sitting there and I had this vision for where my life is going to go, and I wrote it down. And I'm on this plane flying, across the world. And I posted that picture because I had it on my phone, and just like what that meant to me, that like, I'm really stepping into this. And there's so many, I feel like it makes my life so much more full. Yes, my profession is a real estate agent, but I am engaged with my world, and I feel like I'm part of history. Like, I realize that is what I want my mission to be.
I hope you're enjoying this episode of the Ready Yet podcast. I know I really enjoy having conversations about who you need to be in order to reach new heights. As founder and CEO of Conquer Your Business, I work with my clients at the intersection where what they need to do to succeed meets who they need to be to do it. If you would like to have a conversation about your business, please reach out to me at aaron@conqueryourbusiness.com.
Well, so to break it down, you don't need to know exactly how, you just need to have an idea of what are you interested in. You have to take action when the door opens, but the other thing you're really describing throughout the story is go ahead and take the small step and then do as best job as you can.
Yeah.
And then take the next small, big or small, take the step and make sure you're doing the best job you possibly can at that step. And not only does it open the next door, but it also gives you the confidence to keep doing the next thing.
That's the key thing. You build confidence as you continue to do. So I did an interview of Eileen Ullman from the JCC Chicago. And we were talking about the Jewish Film Festival that was going to start to take place. And the interview was in February. And great organization. My kids went to the nursery school there. I've been involved in the camps. Yeah, it's the best. So, Apache Day Camp. So I interview Eileen, and I'm there with some other staff members from the J. And they're talking about how after some of their films, they have a Q&A and there's a moderator. And I'm thinking to myself, this is an opportunity. I got to ask them if they'd let me do this. And I asked after the interview. They were very complimentary of me. And so that boosts my confidence, obviously. And I said, would you be open to me doing some of the moderation? They're like, that's a great idea. So I did one, and then the shutdown happened, but then they shifted everything to online. So I've done several interviews for the JCC, and I've interviewed people who are filmmakers, authors, real change makers who are outside. Like, my podcast is Inside the Skev, people in Skokie and Evanston. who are amazing. But the JCC is, I've gotten to speak with the former speechwriter for President Obama and First Lady Obama. I've gotten to speak with Grammy award-winning composers. I've gotten to just amazing filmmakers. Like I'm like, what? And I'm sitting here, by the way, like my goal for 2020 was to travel and do a lot more, global work. And here I'm sitting at home because of COVID. But then I realized, no, I really am going around the world. Like I did a fellowship with the United Nations Association of Chicago, and we was engaged in embassy, and we worked with the embassy in Kenya, and we did research. So one night it was our final project, and we're speaking with people. My cohort is all around the country, around the United States. The embassy staff's in Kenya. And then, so I finished that up, and then I go to an interview for the JCC where I'm interviewing a filmmaker in Australia and somebody in New York. And I'm like, the world is small.
The world is small, and it has been one of the blessings of COVID is it got smaller and more accessible without the financial and travel barriers.
Correct.
And it's all how you look at it. It doesn't diminish the real scary things that are happening, but it's what you choose to do with it. And that's one of the things that I've been talking about lately, and you'll totally understand this, is it's not the circumstance that determines the outcome, it's the person.
Yeah, it's all your attitude.
Because I remember we had been trying to connect to each other for a little while, and you were like, we were trying to meet in person. We don't live near each other like we used to. So, and I'm just like, let's jump on Zoom, because my world had already gone that route. And you're like, no, let's meet in person. We couldn't find a date. And then we connect, and you're like, dude, I'm never leaving my house again. This is amazing. So it is what you make of it. And you decide how you see things. You decide if you want to be miserable. We all have our moments. We were talking before we started recording. We all have our scary moments.
Sure.
But you don't stay in that. You do the next thing. And one of the things that your story reminds me of is the idea, and I've read this in several different places, that if you take the next step and you do the thing, when you look back, it'll almost feel like it was magic. It will lead you to a place in your life that you probably never imagined being. And odds are that place is so much more than you ever expected.
Yeah. I mean, I've got pretty high expectations of myself. And what happens is the more you do, the more it grows.
Yeah.
But I love the journey. It is the small steps. Like I could have said, all right, like missed the opportunity and whatever. Like right. That was fine.
Right. I can't go do this and be this person. Well, and I had, it's a completely different story, but I really should have been a veterinarian. I should have been a large animal veterinarian. Well, I'm not going to go, I didn't take that route. I wasn't good in school. I didn't do the things necessary at the time. So what can I do with that now? And that's where all the wildlife rescue and that experience, how can you still bring that into your life?
Right.
And what it can lead to if you just stay open to it.
Well, there's so many different opportunities that you can find that may not be the route, but it still works your passions for that subject.
It's still the intention.
Yeah. And I have to say also, in terms of risk, I think that I've opened myself up more to risk. Yeah. And I do think that I've taken risk over the years, but I could get a little nervous about it for sure. Yeah.
It just shows you though how much it's worth it.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. When I was on that trip to Thailand, one of the most fun things is that I would look where I was on Google Earth and I'd zoom in and zoom out. I'm like, no.
I think the person who was most surprised that you were on that trip to Thailand was you.
Oh, 100%. It was me. But then when I was there, I remember there was like one of the first nights I was there, I was out on a tour with a new friend at that time, somebody who I met on the trip, and we went around for a tour of Bangkok at night. So cool. So we're sitting at this restaurant, and there's this, other people as part of the group, and they're talking about how they just went to Vietnam. I'm like, ooh, that would be really cool to do. I'm like, we're in the neighborhood.
Right.
So I'm asking them, do you need a visa? How do you do it? This and that. And then I got the gumption to take a day trip to Saigon and flew out there. And it was, going and, seeing these different places that were important for history, and standing there at the palace gates of where the South Vietnamese president was, and seeing the tanks that are still there, and, meeting people who were victims of Agent Orange, or just being, it's a very important part of American history, I think. But it was kind of scary to go to a country on my own that, has so much in my head, growing up in the 80s. Right. Yes, I wasn't alive when the war was going on. I was born in the early 80s, but you hear a lot about it, Rambo and all these different cultural icons. So that, I would say, was a risk I took, but great reward in terms of being able to step into that and experience it and be like, I'm in somewhere where I never thought I'd be ever.
And I think you had mentioned it before, and what has happened to me as well. Instead of being stuck in the fear, you almost start to get addicted to the excitement of the next step, the excitement of the unknown, the excitement of the risk.
Yeah. It's the excitement of, it's not even the risk, it's the opportunity. I get excited by the opportunity. And also what it does, I think it's made me, in my profession as a real estate agent, it's made me more effective. I mean, in terms of global real estate, I'm the vice chair right now of the Global Real Estate Council at the Chicago Association of Realtors, and I'll likely be the chair next year. And I can speak about a broad range of subjects with my clients. And in terms of, negotiating conversations, having, hundreds or over 100 conversations on, interviews and whatnot, helps you speak to many different people. So I'm able to understand people more, so help negotiate for them, help, empathize with my clients, whatever it may be. It's made me just a better person. And of course, with my family too.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I can't even imagine what else to end on. I mean, the fact that doing all these things just in general makes you a better person.
It does. It makes you more fulfilled. And I think if you have a greater attitude, and an attitude of being, the change maker and doing positive in the world, it gives you a sense of control that you can do something within your space. And that's what I continue to step into.
Awesome. Well, this has been awesome to catch up with you. Thank you so much for sharing that journey, because as someone who's been able to witness so much of it, it's been absolutely awesome and exciting to see. So thank you again for joining me. If people want to connect with you, what is the easiest way for them to learn more about this and make that connection?
Sure. Well, Aaron, first of all, thank you so much for having me on. And this is a great show. And I think it really can give people a lot of ideas of how to improve themselves, and reach out to you, because I think you're fantastic. But where people can find me is if you go to skevinston.com, that's SKEVANSTON.com. Or if you look at my name, aaronmasliansky.com, you'll get to the same place. And you could email me at aaron@skevinston.com. I've got all my information there. My podcast, Inside the Skev radio show, is all on there too. And I'm on social media. You can find me anywhere.
You're not hiding.
No, I'm not hiding. I'm here. I'm here in my basement.
Me too. Awesome. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you again. This has been absolutely amazing.
Thank you so much for joining me on the Ready Yet podcast. I get so motivated by the amazing accomplishments of the remarkable people I meet, and I'm excited to be able to share some of their stories with you. You can find more episodes of Ready Yet at your favorite source for podcasts, or at conqueryourbusiness.com. And if you've already decided that you are ready to become the person you need to be to achieve your big goals, feel free to reach out to find out how I can support you in your efforts. Or check out the Work with Aaron page on the Conquer Your Business website. I also invite you to share this podcast with anyone you know who loves to learn and be inspired. And if you're so inclined, I'd be absolutely grateful for any reviews you'd like to share as well. Thanks again for joining me. This has been Aaron Marcus, hopefully inspiring and helping you to go conquer your big dreams.